What's up guys, and welcome back to another video for me, and today will be hopefully the first in a long line of tuning videos for Project Cars. I've done quite a few for Forza, as many of you will already know, but so I'm going to try and do the same sort of thing for Project Cars and give you an insight into how to tune your cars yourselves rather than relying on everybody else tuning them for you, or you copying videos like mine. You can actually go out there, enjoy the tuning side of it, and tune your cars to handle how you want them to handle. So first of all, we are in the BMW M3. That was from my build track and tune video. We're also on Monza as well. We're currently in car, and as you can see on screen, we have the telemetry system up. In this episode, we are going to be covering tyres, brake balance, and traction control, or the traction slip. That's what we're going to be covering this one, because some will say the tyre settings and the tyre pressures and how you have that set up could be possibly the most important part of the tuning options that you have, because it's the only part of the car that actually is in contact with the road. So if you get that part right, you're well on your way to having a great handling car. So that's where we're going to start, and as you can see from the telemetry on screen as well, we have the tyre temperatures, which are the three numbers just above the little tyre symbols. And that is what we've got for this car so far. We've just literally pulled out the pits and stopped, so we can show you that. The three numbers, if you look at the top left wheel, you can see the 134 on the top left is outside, 132 in the middle, because it's just changed, is the temperature in the middle of the tyre, and the top right one above that is 131, just changed as well, so they're cooling down, but that is the tyre, the temperature on the inside of the tyre. Now this is quite handy when you guys are driving around, so you can try and monitor this as well. It's very difficult to do while you're driving, but you can keep an eye on it to have a quick glance and see if the inside of the tyre or the outside of the tyre is the hottest. But that is a lot to do with camber, which will be for another video. What you also might find helpful in this is, on this car in particular, it has a Motec display, which is the display in the middle of the steering wheel, so you can see the revs and everything. So if you give it a bit of throttle now, you can see that go up. But if you go into the controller settings, and if you assign a button to the Motec display, you can actually scroll through all of these, which show you lots of different interesting things. For instance, that one shows you your best lap time and your split times. That one shows you your fuel consumption, so you can just see last and average just there. That will change obviously every lap and calculate for you, so you can work out how much fuel per lap you're using. Good for endurance stints. But the one we want to look at is this one. So you've got 8 sets of numbers there. So the ones that are currently at 49, they are your tyre temperatures. You'll see they will differ from the ones that are on the telemetry. I believe the ones in the telemetry will probably be in, if I can get this right, Fahrenheit, and the ones on your Motec display will be in Celsius. So that's why they show slightly different things. If you've got a metrical imperial system, they might show exactly the same thing. It's just how I've got mine set up. But the key thing from this is, as you drive around, you can independently, without even the telemetry being on, you can monitor the temperature of your tyres. That is key to actually tuning the pressures in your tyres and getting them all equal, so all tyres are working exactly the same amount. You're getting the most out of them as possible, and just making the car as grippy in the corners as it possibly can be. So make sure you've got your Motec display button enabled. What I usually do, usually have DRS assigned, but I've unassigned that and assigned the Motec display, because I don't use DRS in these cars because it's not available. So I always try and change my buttons around depending on what car I'm driving. So what we'll do is shall go back to the pit box, and we'll go into edit tuning setup. And for those of you that have followed my track and tune video for this car, the one thing you'll probably notice straight away is the tyre pressures are completely different in this than what they were in that video. Now that M3 tune that I gave you in that video, that was more of a general tune. I know you guys are probably going to use it on a variety of tracks, so rather than go too in-depth and tune it for one track where you can use it on one track only, I try to open it up a little bit and get a car that handles quite well on a few tracks. But you'll notice on this that all the tyre pressures, or most tyre pressures, are different levels altogether. Now as you drive round the track and you look at your Motec display, you will see that each tyre will more than likely have a different tyre temperature. So we can balance out the temperatures of the tyres by adding pressure into the wheel, into the tyre, or removing pressure out of it. Now if you have lower pressures in your tyre, what that does is it creates a bigger contact patch between the tyre and the tarmac, and that will in turn generate more grip, but you'll also get higher temperatures. Now if you just remove all the tyre pressure from your car, you'll have loads of contact with the road, but your tyres will overheat very, very quickly. I've done some research. Most people say the window for tyre pressures and tyre temperatures is between 75 and 95 degrees Celsius. So if you're looking for a window to try and get your tyres into those temperatures, that would be a good window. So anywhere between 75 and 90 degrees, that is a good thing. So basically, if you want to lower the temperature in your tyre, it's quite simple. Just add pressure into it. So we move that slider to the right, as so. Make sure I move it back, because this car is tuned for an upcoming race. I don't want to change it too much. So if you want to cool down your tyre temperature, move the slider to the right and increase the tyre pressure. That will reduce the contact patch with the road, and it will in turn generate less heat. Likewise, if you want to increase the temperature of your tyres, you move that bar to the left. So you move it in small amounts and then go out, retest, see what changes. It will probably take 3 or 4 laps for it actually to get a balanced setting. I think when I was tuning this car, I was doing like 5 or 6 laps before the tyres actually got up to proper race temperature. So it does take a lot of time to tune these cars in and out. So if you want to increase the temperature of your tyres, lower the pressure, but obviously don't go too far, otherwise the heat will skyrocket overall. What you can also do, you can also use the tyre pressures to balance the car between understeer and oversteer. Now there's lots of other things that affect understeer and oversteer, so I'm not going to go over any of them. This is purely tyre basis, so what you can do on the tyres to counteract understeer and oversteer as well. So if you're suffering from understeer, which means that when you turn into a corner the car doesn't turn as much as you'd like to and you have to literally fight it around the corner, then what you can do is you have 2 options. You can either lower the temperature in both your front tyres, or you can raise the pressure in both your rear tyres. So understeer, lower the front pressure, or raise the rear tyre pressure. Now you can do one or the other, or you can do a small combination of both depending on which you do. So you can either move 5 bar of pressure off the front, or add 5 bar of pressure on the rear, or add 3 on the rear and remove 2 from the front. So you can try and balance it out that way. But if you're trying to sort out understeer, lower the pressures in the front or raise the pressures in the rear, and vice versa. If you have a problem with oversteer, whereas when you turn in, the back end wants to try and overtake the front end and it gets all out of shape and you're struggling to get around the corners, then what you can do is you can lower the tyre pressure in the rears or raise the tyre pressures in the front. Again, this will affect the heat slightly, but it's all about matching the heat, getting it within that window, and then also getting the car that handles quite well. As you can see, where I've gone this corner, there's a lot of right hand corners. So the left hand side of the car the nature of the circuit makes the left hand side of the tyres, or the left tyres, work a lot harder than the right tyres. So that's why the front left is quite high and the rear left is quite high, because I'm trying to keep the temperature down, so I've added more pressure into it. Whereas the right side of the car, the tyres aren't working as hard, so I've lowered that down pressure wise to try and build the temperature up. So on the left I'm trying to lower the temperature, and on the right I'm trying to build the temperature up. When I've gone round, these tyres are running at about 90 degrees, within 1 or 2 degrees of each other. You'll never get it perfect, but within 1 or 2 degrees of each other for a whole lap. And for me, it's made the car feel a million times better. So that's basically the overview of tyre pressures and how you can use them, and what you have to tweak to either increase tyre temperature or decrease tyre temperature, and also getting the balance between understeer and oversteer. I hope that it was easy to understand, and we shall now move on to brake pressure. This is something down to personal preference. So brake pressure is basically, it works with either the steering wheel or the controller. If you're used to pulling the trigger when you apply the brakes, you naturally, through muscle memory, you'll remember without even thinking how much to pull the trigger. Now if you're pulling that far and you're locking the wheels up and it's just sliding, then what you want to do is you move the brake pressure down slightly to decrease the brake pressure as so. Also, if you're not locking up, what you want to do is just increase this slightly to the point where you start to lock up. So if I wasn't locking up on 94 and I move it to 95 and I start locking up, I know that 94 is pretty much my limit. Maybe knock it down to 93 just to be on the safe side, so I've got that extra bit, a tiny bit of room to play in. But that's what you can do to sort out your brake pressure. I'm trying to remember what I added set to, 92 I think it was. For me, 92% when I press the pedal on my pedal set. I usually press it the same amount more or less each time, and that doesn't lock the wheels up. If I go that little bit further, I've got a bit of play, but if I go further than that, then the wheels lock up and a slide. So that is all about personal preference. It might not work for you what I've got it set at, but it's about you just testing it, going into braking zones, braking your normal amount, and seeing how much the car stops and how much it slides. If it slides, reduce it. If it doesn't slide, just add it a little bit more on until you find the optimum percentage. Brake balance. So when you apply the brakes, you can either apply more brake pressure on the front or more brake pressure on the rear. If you have too much in the front, the more likely the front will lock up and you'll get understeer as a result. Likewise, if you have too much brake pressure on the rears will lock up and you'll lose the back end and you'll probably spin out into the corner. So again, it's trying to find that happy balance on what is acceptable. Usually within like 5% of the 50% mark, so either 55 or 45 is probably the limits that you want to go to. You don't want to go past them. And so for me, anything usually between 50% and 54% for me works pretty well. But those two, pretty straightforward. It's down to you and how the car feels when you're out testing it. Mine might not work for you and yours might not work for me. It's all about personal preference. Now, brake duct. This is something new to the tuning side of it. They never had this in Forza. But what it basically does is when you're driving around on the Motec display, where you had the 4 numbers for the tyre temperatures, the 4 numbers to the right of that are your brake temperatures. So again, you can monitor that as you drive around, brake into corners, and you can see how hot your temperatures in your brakes get. If they get too hot, it will reduce your braking efficiency. So you want to keep an eye on that. If you're getting towards 1,000 degrees, you probably want to just knock it down a little bit. You want to open up your brake ducts a little bit, get more cooling into the brakes and just cool them down a little bit. I'm not too sure what the optimum temperature is for brakes to work at in this game, but I usually go 500 to 750. That's 750 would be the higher limit. Now if you guys know what it is, leave it in the comments below because that'll help me and anybody else that's reading this as well. But as you're driving around, just try and monitor the brake temperatures, and if it's going above 750, then open this a bit more and that'll open more air into the brakes and cool them down. It will give you a bit more drag, but nothing that's majorly that is crazy. Nothing that's going to slow you down by 20-30 miles an hour. Likewise, if your brakes aren't getting warm enough, so if they're maybe below the 500 mark, then you want to close it a little bit. That will reduce the amount of air going into it and heat the brakes up a little bit more, and again you'll get better feel to the brakes. So brake ones is pretty much down to monitoring the brake temperatures, and these are how the car feels for you when you're braking and how much you need to brake into the corners. Traction control slip. Now this works if you have traction control on or if you have the real settings enabled. I've got the real settings enabled, so if this car has traction control in real life, then it will let me have it. If it hasn't got traction control in real life, then I won't be able to use it. But the traction control slip is pretty much, I think most people know what traction control is. It stops the wheels from wheel spinning and losing traction and essentially losing control of the car. But with this you can monitor how much you want it to do that. So basically if you move it to that slider to the left, you'll apply it more. And what that will do will help you in bad weather conditions, so when it's wet you will actually won't spin the wheels out so much, and it'll help to stabilise the car a little bit as well. Whereas the race I'm going to be doing, there's only light rain in it, so I know that the weather will be it will be wet, but it won't be a downpour or a storm or anything, so I can afford to open that up a little bit. Again, that's down to testing in wet conditions and see what works for you, so you just move it up and down until you've got a part that's actually happy for you and you can control the car without losing the back end, without getting loads of wheel spin, without having trouble getting out of corners and stuff like that. So again, it's all about that balance for you. What I have might not work for you, as I said, and what you have might not work for somebody else, so it's all about that personal preference. So that pretty much sums up what I wanted to go over today. So we've got tyre pressures, just to sum it up. If you want to increase the heat in your tyres, lower the tyre pressures. If you want to lower the heat in your tyres, then increase the tyre pressures. And you might need to balance each wheel individually by using the heat either on the telemetry or on the Motec display, and try and get them all within like 2 or 3 degrees of each other during a longer stint. It probably takes about 4 or 5 laps. So there you go guys, that's my first tuning video for Project Cars. I hope it helped, I hope it was understandable. If you've got any questions, feel free to leave them in the comment section below, or if there's anything else you want to add to it, again, put it in the comment section below. It helps me and other people who watch this video to read the comments and then see that as well. Again, don't forget to like my video if you've enjoyed it and found it helpful. Subscribe if you are a new subscriber, or just share it and help as many people out with the tuning aspect of it, because it is a very enjoyable part of the game if you're into that sort of thing as well. So the more of these things we can get out there, the more people can actually enjoy them, get the game themselves. So thanks for watching, guys. Stay tuned, I'll have some more of these coming really soon, and until then I shall see you all soon.